Good morning, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to a very special edition of Breaking News for this Tuesday, the 10th day of December, 2024. With so much that is taking place right now in Syria and in the Middle East, and so many players in this drama, we're going to do breaking news a little bit differently today. Basically, what we're going to do is list the various players, what they are doing right now, the issues they faced, and then explain where the Bible says they will eventually end up. Since there is so much to look at, actually dozens and dozens of stories that are out there, our explanations will consist of two different episodes of breaking news for today, December 10th. In this first episode, part one, we'll look at Iran, Israel, Russia, and the United States and where they all fit in. Later today, part two, we will release. It will deal with the present state of Syria with its various rebel groups as well as the Christians and how they'll fare in all of this. Then we're going to look at the Middle East as a whole, what it may mean for them, what it'll mean for Europe, possibly with the refugees that'll come out of Syria, and then the possibility of a regional or global war. So we'll hit all those topics today. Now, the summaries of these will be found on our YouTube page, our YouTube channel. And so, as always, when we do the videos, you that watch on YouTube, you see the explanations there. You may want to cut and paste the summary there because it'll explain what's going on and you can use it for future reference. And the summaries are also there on our website, Educating Our World, as well as on our app, EOW with Don Stewart. So this will be great for future reference as it gives a summation of really what's going on here because there's so much taking place, and I thought this would be the best way to do it. Now, also, too, every headline we do, there'll be a link to where the story can be found on various websites. And in other words, if you want to go more thoroughly into these explanations, we're going to give you the links right now here to look at them because there's so much to say on each of these stories. We could go an hour on basically every single story here, every single point. Well, we don't do that every day, but we want to give you the option of looking at these in great detail. Now, we trust in doing this, it's going to be a big help since it's easy to get confused with all that's going on. So let's look at four subjects today, okay? Our first subject is Iran. Three headlines that are basically speaking to what's taking place. In fact, all of these are on YNET, the YNET website. The first one, the fall of the Assad regime continues the collapse of the Iranian dream, is what we've been talking about. The rise and fall of Iran's Shia Crescent, that's a second headline. And a third one, fall of Assad sparks blame game among Iranian leadership. And all these are from YNET, the website. And one of the things they say, while it is premature to dismiss Iran's influence in the Middle East, the collapse of the Assad regime has placed its axis of resistance in unprecedented jeopardy. Boy, ain't that the truth? Indeed, Iran is in real trouble with all its proxies falling by the wayside. So these stories here, particularly the one on the rise and fall of Iran's Shia Crescent on YNET, it's really interesting. It goes into great detail. And so, again, if you're interested in looking at more of a summary of the whole situation, they do a great job there. Basically, it says the same thing we've been saying, since last October 7th, that this is not something that is surprising with respect to who Iran is with its surrogates in with Hamas and then of course Hezbollah and then Syria supplying the weapons to Hezbollah. And so it gives a thorough explanation of what's going on. So you'll want to look at that. Now, here's the question. Why is this important? Well, as we've continually indicated, Iran cannot be the lead country in attempting to destroy Israel militarily. They can't be taking the lead. Why? Because they are listed as part of the Ezekiel 38-39 invasion as an invading force, but they are subordinate to Russia. Russia will be the leading force. So Iran with its proxies and with Hamas in Gaza, with Hezbollah in Lebanon, with formerly Assad there in Syria supplying them weapons. That can't happen anymore because they're not going to be the main military power. So, as we've said, their access of evil, as these stories indicate, must diminish, as we see happening right now in Gaza, in Lebanon, and now in Syria. And so, amazingly, what we're seeing now, as the Bible has predicted, what we've said is going to happen, this scenario is falling into place with Iran going by the wayside, Iran decreasing. That's our first point. So we'll keep an eye on that. Number two subject is Israel. A headline from Israel Hayom, Syria after Assad, a wake-up call for intelligence and battle for a new Mideast. Now, this is interesting how this first line of the story reads. Assad's fall marks the Iranians' access collapse, which we've talked about, and sparks a new regional power struggle as Sunni rebels seize Damascus and Israel confronts a changed strategic landscape. Fears now grow over Iran's nuclear ambitions and Jordan's stability. Now, we talked about that yesterday, and this is the real issue now that's left on the table with Israel and Iran, what to do about their nuclear program. We'll go into greater detail, in the coming days on all of this, but this is the issue. So you got that headline. That's from Israel Hayom website. The Jewish News Service mentions this fact. The IDF, the Israeli Air Force, has hit more than 300 Syrian regime targets in 2 days, effectively wiping out the Syrian Air Force. So what they have done is taken care of over 300 targets in the Syrian regime because Syria no longer exists under Bashar Assad. The rebels have taken over, and they want to make sure that the military assets are not there for their use. So hitting over 300 targets in 2 days. And the U.S. also did the same thing. They've hit like 150 targets also. And so you've got that going on. It's from the Jewish News Service. Then from the Times of Israel, the troops will stay in a Syria buffer zone and strategic Mount Hermon as long as needed. Now, this is fascinating. At the Israel's border, northern border, you have Mount Hermon, all right, with Syria on the other side. And Syria, basically, Syria had its border there, its Mount Hermon border on the other side of the mountain, looking over Syria, and Israel had one on its own side. Well, the buffer zone there has been taken over by Israel. So they're on the Syrian side now, making sure that this rebel group doesn't come up to the heights, the Golan Heights there, the top of the border, and use it to attack Israel with. So they are right there. And the UN is squawking about it. What are you doing going to Syrian territory? And Netanyahu says, look, we're going to stay there as long as necessary because we don't want these rebels to come in and start attacking us from there, taking the high ground. So this is what's going on also. So not only that, here's a story from Israel National News Today. This was incredible. Israeli tanks are about 20 kilometers from Damascus right now. In the wake of the toppling of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, Israel has struck more than 250 targets across Syria. Reports say the IDF has taken control of 9 villages in the southern suburbs of Damascus. The Lebanese Al-Mayadeen network, which is affiliated with Hezbollah, reported early Tuesday morning that Israeli tanks are now positioned approximately 20 kilometers from the Syrian capital of Damascus. So Israel's not taking any chances. Now, why is this important? Well, again, Israel is in a wait and see attitude as it has geared itself up militarily to defeat and deal with any attacks from this new group leading in Syria. They will do whatever it takes to make their country as secure as possible. Now, we know this. Eventually, the country of Syria on Israel's northern border must be placed in a situation where Israel will not fear any attack or any invading force. We've talked about this same thing true in Lebanon, because when the Ezekiel 38-39 invasion takes place, Israel is not expecting any invading force to come across its northern border, but it will from both Lebanon and Syria. Now, so how this will happen, how Syria is going to turn out is anybody's guess. Don't let anybody tell you they know what's going to take place because we don't know. But what we do know, like we mentioned with Hezbollah, same thing in Syria, they'll be denuded in such a way where they won't be a military force at the time of the Russian invasion in the future, Russian-led invasion, simply because Israel will be not expecting some great military force to invade them from the north because they will seemingly be in a peaceful situation. Of course, that hasn't happened yet. It's still down the line, but it's important that Israel takes care of itself and is defending itself. So anyway, they're gonna be at the ready. Now, our third subject is Russia. What about them? Now, this is from the Insider. I'm going to read you the headline. We were screwed over. Russian propagandists fume over the downfall of Assad regime in Syria. This is from a website called The Insider. And then from the UK Daily Mail, humiliated Putin will face Turkey, the US, Iran, Israel, and the Islamists in fight for control in Syria. Again, here's the deal. Russia has 2 military bases in Syria that they obviously need to protect. More importantly, it will be Russia that eventually leads the predicted last days invasion of Israel. As we mentioned, Ezekiel 38-39. Therefore, to form such a coalition, and we have emphasized this time and time again, Russia will have to insert itself as the power in the region. Therefore, we look for their influence to increase, especially after the war in Ukraine is completed. So they're going to be vying in Syria for leadership there simply because their bases are there. They've got two military bases there and they have to protect them. And they were caught too. That's why the first story says that they're fuming at the downfall of the Assad regime. How come this wasn't foreseen? As nobody actually foresaw it. It's really interesting how it caught everybody by surprise. Russia, it caught Israel, it caught the United States, it caught the whole Middle East, and I guess caught Bashar Assad by surprise too, how fast it went. So anyway, now in contrast with Russia, which will be inserted as number one in this area, the United States will be non-existent in these future events, which brings us to subject number four, the United States. This from Breitbart story. J.D. Vance echoes Trump's stance on staying out of Syria. He said, "It's not our fight." He posted this on X, formerly Twitter. The U.S. should stay out of what is happening in Syria instead of getting involved. Vance's post came after the Syrian regime of Bashar Assad had fallen and Assad had fled the country. And so you have a united stance from both the incoming president and vice president. We're not going to get involved in this. This has to run its own course. Now, the U.S. did bomb some of these sites of ISIS that were there in Syria and some of the military installations, as Israel did, to make sure the chemical weapons aren't going to be used and some of the other weapons that were stored there in Syria, but they're not going to be involved. Now, why is this important? Well, since the United States is not a player in last days Bible prophecy, it's consistent with the fact that their involvement in the Middle East will be minimal as compared to Russia. Therefore, we are not surprised, are we, with this basically hands-off attitude. All right, so this simply explains the present position as well as the future predictions regarding Iran, Israel, Russia, and the U.S. And again, these are always continuing and developing stories, but this is the basic summary where these four will eventually end up. Now, for a thorough explanation as to what will eventually happen, please see our book, 25 Signs. We're near the end, that documents the various predictions in Scripture with respect to the last days. In addition, see our books, look up a timeline of 50 last days events, the Ezekiel 38-39 invasion, the final Antichrist, and the Jews, Jerusalem, the coming temple for much more detail on these coming events. Now, they're all found on our website, Educating Our World, under the heading of Bible Prophecy, and all these books are free download, so please avail yourself of it. Now, again, later today, we're going to look at the other players in this drama and explain where they all fit in. Now, hopefully this will be helpful to you to get this summary, to get this explanation, because you can't tell the players without a scorecard. I'm going to give you the scorecard today, and you'll want to probably cut it, select it, cut and paste it, and print it out somewhere. Just look at it for future reference because it's something that's going to continue on and on and on. All right, I'm Don Stewart. Thanks again for watching. We'll be with you later today for a second edition of Breaking News. Until then, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.